Dr. Bill and Joanne Cala. They're the founders of an organization called Joining Hearts and Hands, which began as a result of a trip that they took to Kenya back in 2005. And I understand this is their second appearance here at Osher. It sounds like both of them have already had several careers before they embarked on this new one. Bill was the superintendent of Fairport Central School District, interim superintendent of the Rochester City School District, and he was a college professor. And Joanne was a bank vice president, a teacher, school counselor, licensed mental health professional, and a college professor. So welcome, Bill and Joanne. If you haven't already done so, please make sure you turned off your cell phones. Thank you.
Is this on? Can you hear me?
No. Middle, in the middle.
Can you hear me now?
No. This is right. I think it's mine. Okay.
I can still speak.
Joanne.
I think the problem is there.
I feel like I'm in a spaceship. We're very happy to be back here. The last time we were here about 7 years ago, it was just, we just had, like right now, we just had a wonderful time together. And we try to do this very participative. So if you have something that you'd like to add while you draw attention to us, or after we're done, we'd be glad to take any questions or comments or whatever reflections that you have. Many of you have traveled extensively, I know, and your careers are very broad, as I remember from last time. Bill and I, it's about 14 years ago, we took our first trip to Kenya, and then we went on to India. We went to India because at the time, the Fairport Central Schools was going to send about 25 students over to India after the tsunami. So being superintendent, Bill wanted to go where those kids were going to go first before. And it was a very good journey when we went to India after that. But on that trip, we went to Kenya first. And we started in Nairobi and took a bus, a ratty old bus across the country. And we landed in Western Kenya near Lake Victoria, and we'll start the story when Bill begins, but that's where we fell in love with Kenya. We were going through the Rift Valley, and we started meeting the people, and we both felt we can do something here. Both of us have been blessed with working with many people. We have many contacts. We live in a wonderful area in Western New York and in Greater Rochester. And we also are residents down in Vero Beach. So we use all of those areas. And everyone has just embraced us. So we felt we could do something. And that's how we started 14 years ago. Bill is going to take the beginning part of this, and then I'll finish up toward the end. Are you ready to go?
Hope that's not too loud. Is that all right?
It's good for you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
I felt loud.
Yeah, I thought she sounded awful.
You just talk and I'll
Just-
fix it.
okay.
Get the hype.
Well, it's good to see you. It's good to see some familiar faces too. Some Fairport peeps. We appreciate that. And it's good to be back here again. As Joanne said, I think we were here 7 to 8 years ago, and it was really a good meeting. So, Joanne gave you a little background, and we had this epiphany in 2005 that we wanted to do something good in this world, and we've been doing it ever since for 14 years. So the first slide that you see, our cover slide, That's was taken last year, and that was in a place in Kisumu, Kenya. And these little kids are at an orphanage, St. Mary Magdalene Orphanage in Kisumu. And we've had a relationship with them now for just 3 years. And you'll see through this through our talk here what we've been doing there. We got an email from a nun that's run by nuns, Kenyan nuns, and we got an email because we have a website, and they said, can you help us? We need help, and I said, okay, we'll go down there. Kisumu is where our location is. That's where we stay. It's our center location, and we branch out from there. So it was all with an email. We met her and fell in love with her, fell in love with the kids, and we've done a lot there, which we'll talk about in a minute. All these push pins those are not all of them, but there are a lot of the locations where we have schools, where we have kids that we help. We send a lot of kids to school. I'll get to that in a bit. But we have down below here, you see that little push dot in Tanzania over there. That's just over a couple hours over the Kenyan border. That's a very interesting story too. And that's an all-girls school that we've built and have been building for now like 7-8 years, right? Even longer. And that's a really interesting story. I was a visiting professor at Nazareth College for 2 years, and there was they had a pancake breakfast, a fundraiser there on a Saturday, and Joanne and I went to this fundraiser, and Joanne sees these 2 African nuns sitting in the corner, and we recognized immediately that they didn't look American. They look like they're from Africa. Of course, Joanne goes and introduces herself to them. Strikes up a conversation, and so we're from Tanzania, and of course Nazareth College had this program where they would send 2 nuns there they'd send 2 nuns to Nazareth College to get their bachelor's and master's degree. When they finished with their master's degree, they'd send another 2, and they did this for 19 years. And these 2 were the last 2 that they've actually ever sent. The program just sort of, I guess, died. So we strike up a conversation with them and said, you have to come visit us. You have to come visit us. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at the map and I'm going, okay, wow, that's a long haul. Because we're over by Lake Victoria over here, the Kisumu area, and that's way down there. And from Nairobi, it's 13 hours, by the way, just so you know the distance. That's Nairobi, I think we're right over here there, down to there, that's a 13-hour. And our first trips down there were by vehicle in a van, and most of the roads were dirt. And it was the drive from Nairobi to, it's a long ride, actually, it's about 6-7 hour ride from Kisumu to Nairobi, and then 13 hours down to there. That we'd be in a van, and inside the van, all windows closed, on these dusty, dirty roads, and we'd have towels wrapped around our head trying not to choke, because it was just absolutely so incredibly bad. The roads were so incredibly bad. The good news now is that the roads have actually, since then, in the last 7-8 years, they're pretty decent roads. The Chinese have come and have done an awful lot with the infrastructure in Africa. There's a price for that, though. They want something for it. There's no free lunch. So that's how we arrived there. They put us up in the mother house, and we looked at their first building that they started building for the school for girls. And of course, providing, one of our missions is to make sure that women get an education, because it's been all men in Africa for many years. So we were to make sure that's our mission. So we see an all-girls school, high school, we were thinking, okay, this is a really good thing. So since then, we've built the Form 2 complex. All these are 3 classroom complexes. They had Form 1, which is like, in the British system, it's more like 7th or 8th grade. So we built Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, Form 6, and 2 science classrooms, 2 science complexes. Each one of those has either 3 or 2 classrooms in it. So that we've done an awful lot there in Tanzania, but that's our only entrance into Tanzania, and it's going to stay that way. We try to keep ourselves manageable. So our mission is to build schools, kitchens, latrines. We go into a school and we do a needs assessment. Usually the school that we go to is like built out of mud. It's just a real mess. And they don't have any of the basic needs met. They need latrines. Their kitchen is just a hut, and they light a fire in the middle of the kitchen, and there's no ventilation, and people are getting sick from that. And then water is also an issue. And then we deal with the more esoteric things like building a classroom and going from there. But we try to, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We take care of the needs first, and then go to the more complex things. So build schools, kitchens, latrines, provide then books, desks, school supplies, and provide critical health needs, which I'll get to in a bit, which some of the stuff has evolved over the time, over the years. In 2005, we worked in one school, we rebuilt one classroom, and then we just, as we see the needs in the community, we continue to grow from there. We are really connected with with several orphanages right now, and these are orphans at a place in Western Kenya. We are involved in 2 orphanages in Western Kenya and 1 in Kisumu. Secondary education is one of our biggest emphasis. Other than Judy, is there anyone else here who sponsors a child? Sally? Anyone else? Okay, so this is a really big part of what we do. Right now we have about 125 kids that we're sponsoring for their secondary education. And they're mostly orphans. And the need is incredible. We could, we could do thousands of kids if we had the capability. But every one of these 125 kids that we sponsor for secondary education would not be able to go to school if it weren't for our sponsors. They would be home. They'd be digging with a hoe in the backyard. So over the years, since 2005, we've probably put about over 1,000 kids through school, and have their high school diplomas, and now many of them have gone to university. See, secondary education is not free in Kenya. You got to pay for it. The government pays some now. They used to pay nothing. Now they pay some, but it's still very expensive. And there's no way a family is going to be able to afford, many families are going to be able to afford secondary education unless there's some help. So our orphans are actually now really at the high end of the educational pyramid, if you will, because we're giving them an education, and they're among the most educated in Kenya, because now many of them are going to university, and they're going to university because they do so well, and the government will actually pay for university if you do very well. So our kids who would not have been able to go to high school are actually able to go to university now, which is just absolutely incredible. You'll see some of our success stories. This guy, Victor Sewe, this is my example. You can see from the dated photograph that it's dated in 2007. His name is Victor Sewe, and he's a total orphan. And he came from a village called Maseno, and we picked him up, and someone sponsored him in Rochester. And this is Victor today. This is the most incredibly fine young man that we know. And we have story after story of guys like this. He's in the medical profession now. He's not a doctor, but he's in the medical research. And this just makes it so worthwhile when we follow them from here they are, this this kid who was that was an 8th grader back there. He's an 8th grader right there. And here, this is a young man who's productive, has a job, and is a good job, and is really a credit to Kenya. We talked about the schools that we build. I couldn't tell you exactly how many classrooms we've built. We've built maybe 75 classrooms in countless locations. This is a complex, for example. This is a whole complex that we built. It's a place in Butere, Kenya, in western Kenya. It's called Lufumbo. And we built this complex, which is library. It's a library, classrooms, workroom, and offices. And this was actually quite unique in that area. No school had a library. Just absolutely. We still don't know of a school in that whole area that has a library. So we built the library with the hopes that we were going to get books in there. And this was difficult. We actually had and this was quite a few years ago. We had a drive to collect books in Rochester and Fairport, and we collected over 20,000 books. And then I have a friend in Long Island who also does this kind of stuff. He does it way in the north of Kenya, in Meru. And he said, look, I'm going to get a container, a shipping container, put it on. He was a social studies teacher at Shoreham Wading River High School, a place where I was superintendent in the 90s. That's how I know the guy. And he said, let's split the container and we'll send it to Kenya, and I'll take half the books, you take half the books, and we'll ship them. And I said, you know, Kevin, I've never been able to ship anything to Kenya and have it get there. I said, so I'm really worried about this. And he said, no, I could make this happen. I could make it happen. So we collect all the books. We get the 20,000 books. He puts 20,000 books. It took us over a year to get this container filled. And then we go through the bureaucracy to try to get it to our places. Fast forward, make a long story short, 4 years later, we actually got them to arrive. And believe me, I'm actually surprised they got there. And this was 3 years ago, I think. 3 years ago, the container arrives, and we had them trucked to this location. And as it turns out, the guy from Long Island gave me about 10,000 of his books, so I had about 30,000 books. And we brought them over here into this library, completely outfitted the library. We had books from preschool books to adult novels and nonfiction, everything. We had everything, really a library. And we had so many books that we were able to send books to 13 schools, 13 different schools. We basically told the principal, said, call the neighboring schools because we have way too many books for this library. And they were honest like ants. It was just, distributing that was just absolutely incredible. It was really rewarding. I would never do it again. Never do it again. Imagine 4 years. And what we had to go through was like, everyone's looking for a handout. You know, the container stayed in the port at Mombasa, I think, for a couple of years. Oh. We couldn't get it out of port. And this was a huge problem in Kenya. I remember we were there one year, and it was on the front page of their national paper, and it showed all of the containers stacked up, saying that they can't get them out of port because of a lot of corruption and everyone's looking to get their palm greased. So that's the library story. This is one of the 3 classroom buildings we built for the girls' school in Tanzania. It's called Usambara Girls' School. And as I said, we built 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. 7 of those. Whoops. This is the orphanage where those girls on the first slide are from, St. Mary's Orphanage. And we just finished this building on December 2nd. It's our first two-story building. See, the conditions the kids were in this school was, they literally had closets where they were running classrooms. It was horrible. And so they have a very small plot of land. And we usually always build ranches. You know, we don't build two-story buildings, but they had such a small area to build. So, okay, let's give a shot at a two-story building. So this is our first two-story building. There are 8 classrooms in there, and we just came back from there about 3 weeks ago. And it was actually our first visit there when it was completely done. We were there during construction, and it's an absolutely gorgeous building. We have terrazzo floors on the inside of this thing, which is very unique. It's very rare, but it's really, it's all electrified, you know, lights. It's fairly modern, really nice building. Yeah, not only is, this is not just for the orphans. There's about, anywhere at any given time, 60 to 80 orphans in the school. And this is like, the school is a primary school, so it's like preschool through grade 8. So it not only serves those 60 to 80 orphans, but it also serves the whole community. And of course, the moment this building went up, the enrollment just went, you know, through the roof, because it's like there's no school in that whole area that is nice as this. So, and plus they had just wonderful teachers. You know, several nuns who are teaching there, and then the lay people are great. The principal's a lay principal; he's fabulous. So it's a real plus for the whole area, not just the orphanage. These are some of the kids on the grounds. This is these at St. Mary Magdalene. Oh yeah, this is still under construction, as you can see. So this, I'm giving you a sample of some of the stuff we've done. As I said, we've done like maybe 70 different construction projects. This is a kitchen and a dining hall for a high school that we're building. This is a new high school. It's a public high school. It's a new high school in a place called Malava, Kenya, and the name of the school is Friends of Manguliro. And it's a dining hall with a it's like JA. It's like a cafetorium. In the back, it's got a little stage built, and then the rest of it's cafeteria, and then the kitchen's attached to it. This school didn't exist 3 years ago, and of course, we put latrines into this place. That was our first effort, and then now this is the second one. You want to talk about this? This is Hannah's.
Can we ask questions?
Yes,
now?
absolutely.
In the 2 pictures before this, there was a big green tank. What is that? No, you just went past it. Over on the right-hand side. Is that a water tank?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Glad you asked. That little guy right, guy right there. Yeah. And Freddie over there, right there.
Yeah.
One of the major means of getting water is to collect it off the roof. So that water, those tanks are, you can see the piping going right there. It goes right to a roof. Okay? And so we do, we're by Lake Victoria. When it rains, it rains. In fact, that school where we built the library, one of the first things we did in that school, we did the latrines first, then we did the kitchen, then we did water. And we were thinking about drilling a well. Very expensive to drill a well. And then we were there one day, inside, most of the roofs on these places are metal roofs. And there's no insulation or anything like that. It's hot all the time. It's on the equator. You know, the temperature is pretty much in the 80s all the time, year round. So we're inside a classroom, and it decides it's going to start pouring out. And when it pours, it's like a deluge. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And inside a classroom with a metal roof, it's deafening. So the principal is next door to standing right next to me, and I said, "Does it do this often?" He goes, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, let's collect the water. He said, let's build some tanks." And at that school, we built a concrete tank, but we found that it's much better to just use these plastic tanks. They're a heck of a lot easier to do. Yeah.
What are the challenges of construction, getting people who say we built, what does that involve basically? That's one question. The second question is the language that they teach in the schools English?
Yeah. Okay, I'll start with your second question first. Kenya, Kenyans are just so intelligent and just so well educated when they get to go to school. So when they start in preschool, like they call them baby class, which is around 3 years old, preschool. They start they come with their tribal language, with their native language. And officially there are 42 languages because there are 42 tribes. But the reality is there are many more than that. We just went to a funeral 2 weeks ago in Kenya. And the funeral was in Luya. So Luya is a tribe. And then as we found out, we just learned this, there are so many sects of Luyas that you could be 2 miles away in Luya town and somebody speaks a totally different version of Luya that you don't understand. So you have all of these languages. And in fact, I was sitting next to a Kalenjin, which is another tribe, a friend of ours, and they were giving, everyone goes up to the mic and gives a talk about the deceased. And I turned to him and I said, "Do you understand anything they're saying?" He goes, "Not a word." And this is a guy, an African, a Kenyan, who is, a couple hours away. And he said, "I don't understand a word of what they're saying." So now these kids, to get back to your question, these kids come to school in grade 3 in Kenya, and they have, the only language they know at this point is their tribal language. All right. So if it's a Luya school, it's Luya. If it's Luo, it's Luo school, Luo language. So they start teaching immediately in English and Swahili. Swahili is the national language. So to try to unite the country, you try to learn Swahili. But what has been up to this point, the official language, the difference between the national language and the official language is English. So in other words, in the past, see, with the reason I'm having this caveat, and I'm saying in the past, is that recently when they had all this election problem, part of the revolt is that we should make Swahili the national or the official language. So the official language technically is either Swahili or English. So in other words, if I wanted to get a driver's license, I had to know English. So all of you wanted to get a passport, you had to know English because that's the official language. So in schools, they start teaching children. They start actually teaching. So you go into a classroom and they're speaking Swahili and or English, and they teach them the grammatical structure, everything, and they teach them how to learn how to speak English and Swahili. So by the time they get out of high school, they're trilingual. They know their tribal language, okay, their birth language, and they know English and Swahili. And one of the reasons why we're in Kenya is because of English, because it makes it easier for us. If we were in the Congo or one of these places where it's French, it's like it would be more difficult for us in order to navigate. So that's the language scene, which is really robust, and it's hard in this country to teach anybody a second language. We think everything's English, but it's really great to see how easy it is for them to. I'm just going to do the second part of his question, and then I'll get yours. Okay, now the second part. The first question is how easy is it to navigate, or when we build, how do we do that?
Workers.
We're, you know, with my background in building schools here, it's, we require 3 competent bids for every bit of construction. We like the construction to be done by local people as well, so that